Hello friends, Tanya here with another video for the Spellbinders Club Kits. This is for the March 2025 March kits, and the theme is Nearest and Dearest. We're going to start with the Fairways and Fishtails Small Die of the Month. This die set does two different themes, fishing and golf. The fishing theme has lots of smaller elements. You can see a two-piece tackle box here. And you can see a fish. There are several different ways you can configure your, it looks mostly like a male figure, but I'm sure you could make it feel rather gender neutral. There is a hat, a bucket hat, and like a baseball cap from the rear. There is hair you can attach to the head. There are pieces to create two different styles of, or two different shapes of the line on the fishing pole. I'm attaching the little tiny hook here, and I think in future I would put the line behind the hook die cut. And I'm attaching our cute little fish here. That fish looks like it's either jumping or being caught on the line, or it looks like it's just flipping around on the dock or attached to a stringer. We've got this bucket that has a darker elliptical shape that fits on the top to make it look like the darker inside of the bucket. And this handle can go up or down. My pickup stick and my reverse tweezers are especially handy with these very small die cut pieces, and I just love how these all come together to create a really cute scene. We have a, here are the components for the head here. I've got the hair that you can put on the head. Here is a baseball cap as viewed from the back. And you can see that there is a bucket hat that you can also use. If you didn't want to put the hair on your head here, you could have the bald members of our families represented here. I am putting the bucket hat on. I did ultimately put that a little too low, and you'll see me fix that in a little bit. As always, there are embossed lines to help with placement, so you can see where to put the shirt both on the neck and on the pants here. I've decided to die cut all of my flesh tone, all the heads from craft cardstock. Here I'm fixing the placement of that hat. The first time I placed it, a little bit of the head stuck above the hat. There are also die cut boots to add to this, and you could make this look like waders. You could, one of those lines really looks like a fly fishing line, so you could have this person standing in a river too. That would be cool. Ooh, I have to think about this. I think I have some, I have some stencils that could make it look like someone is standing in a river. Oh yeah, that would be cool. Next we have a dock. The die cuts out these three posts, and this long element can be used both for the golf club and for the dock. It's just a long, narrow rectangle. I'm using my grid mat here to help line up the posts with this dock, and that comes together quite easily. I'm just using the tip of my reverse tweezers to get any of the paper crumbs off the edge. I tend to do this as I go because with delicate dies, that it's kind of inevitable. That's okay. It's just part of crafting. Here I'm going to just kind of lay things out in a potential way to create a card later. Here is that long, narrow, rectangular piece we use for the dock again, and I have die cut it with some light gray cardstock along with the head of the golf club. There is a two-piece die for the golf ball. There's a backer and the detail element with all of the dimples on it. And I don't actually have the wax seal of the month this month. I didn't get it in the mail. And it is a golf ball styled wax seal, which would be super cool. I've seen several people use it because it's roughly the same size as this golf ball. In place of the paper die cut, they have put the wax seal, which is really kind of cute. There's a 2-piece golf tee also. Next, we're going to play with the large die of the month, Friends and Family Vignettes. We have these 2 arched dies that cut a stitch version and a solid version, and they layer together nicely. We've cut this adorable little dinosaur. I just added a piece of scrap cardstock in black behind the eye. There are, of course, embossed lines to help place that backbone ridge of spikes. The tummy just lines up with the edge there, and it creates the look of 2 arms. And you can stop right there and have an adorable dinosaur. But there's also a couple of more components. This adorable little tutu or skirt and a nice little crown. Now you could use this crown on both the dinosaur and the little dog in the die set that is in the large die of the month for this month. There are a lot of components in this large die this month. Now we're moving on to the dog, and I am taking the backer piece that creates the lower jaw and gives you a spot to color for the eyes and the nose. Now you're going to line the top edges of the head together because there is a little bit of an overlap for the lower jaw of your dog. There are embossed marks here to help you line up the second color for the eyes, over the eyes and the ears. Now you could make your dog all the same color, but this gives you a lot of opportunity to individualize your cute little dog. There's also this die that cuts out the tongue. Now you can make your dog with or without the tongue. And when you're tucking this in, just make sure that the little extra tab isn't showing through the nose area. Next is a little piece that helps create the look of the saddle coloring on your dog. And this fits on before you place the head on. Now you're going to put a little bit of glue on the bottom of the dog's head and line it up with the embossed line on the body. We have 1 spot left. This is the tail and the spot over the bum area on your dog. And you just follow those embossed lines to help guide the way this 3-sectioned piece fits on. Next is a baseball cap. This is super cute. There's the base of the cap, and then there are 3 pieces that go onto the crown of the cap so that you have the look of a traditional baseball cap. Now I chose to do this in pink and 2 different tones of pink, and you can do it in your favorite team colors or whatever. This is just adorable and comes together very quickly. Next, you have a pair of slippers. I chose some blues here. And you could, again, choose whatever color combos you would like. And they just slip together perfectly. So cute. Quick and easy. And the die actually cuts out 2 slippers and 2 inserts for the soles, the insides of the slippers. In addition to the slippers, you have a bone that you can pair with your dog. There are also several floral and leaf elements in this die set. There are so many cute things combined in this one die set. It's pretty amazing. For this largest flower, there is also a die that cuts out one of these curled up leaf or petal pieces for each of the petals. They are all identical and they are very cute. I chose to do 2 pink tones here again. And this is just for the largest of the 5-petal flowers. There is a center for each of the 5-petal flowers that is larger and has some dots die cut into it and an inner center. I chose to use some foiled paper and some black for the very middle piece, and they come together very easily. This larger flower fits very nicely on this 2-leaf stem. The second 5-petal flower is just a little smaller version without the curled up petals. Again, just going to put the larger floral center on first and then the little tiny dot in the center. You could put gems or pearls on that center if you would prefer. Lots of ways to dress this up. There's some separate leaves in this also, and I thought they worked very nicely on the smaller of the 5-petal flowers. There's also a branch of buds or berries here, and we have these little pieces that add color to the tip so that they can look like flower buds or berries if you would like. And again, my pickup tool is very handy for getting precise placement of these delicate die cut pieces and for knocking off any of the paper crumbs. Next, we have a 3-piece flower here. It's a cupped flower. I'm putting a gold center in here. A few of them I put black centers. You could put whatever color you would like in there, and I'm just going to use the same color to do the fronter, or the fronter, the closer petal, the one that's on the front, closest to us. And it fits very nicely on this stem that has a lovely like calyx type, the fine little green leaves that are underneath many flower buds. There's also a smaller version of the cupped flower here, and it's a little more detailed. The larger one is more rounded and full, and this one has a little bit more delicate look to it with a little more detail to the petals. Again, just lining up the second piece there. You could use 2 different colors of cardstock or ink blend 2 different colors there to make a more detailed or flower with a little more depth, but I chose to just use some solid colors. Next, we're going to use the clear stamp and die of the month, also titled Nearest and Dearest. This is a sentiment stamp set, and it has 2 large stamps with multiple sentiments on each of them, and 1 die that cuts all of those out. I'm just going to stamp these out on 1 A2 sized piece of cardstock, so 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches, and I'm just applying gentle pressure on these stamps so I don't distort the letters on our sentiments. If you push too hard on your photopolymer stamps, you can cause some distortion of your image. So it's better to just stamp many times than to push really hard. Sometimes your magnet can get in the way and make it a little more difficult to stamp perfectly. I did use some VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink for this, which is a pigment ink, and it makes it much easier to do some heat embossing. And I just have this bin of clear embossing powder that I'm using to add some extra detail to our sentiments here. There are so many sentiments. There's what, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. There's 20 sentiments on here. Now, while I'm doing the heat embossing, we've got to my grandma, for my grandson, oh gosh, to my grandpa, to my amazing dad, you make us so proud, celebrate big today. For my granddaughter, your love is my anchor. There are so many different ways to use these. Happy Mother's Day, Father's Day, so many great sentiments in this. And this is very family oriented. We also have some scripty fonted words here. I think it says mom, dad, son, daughter, and was there a fourth? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Mom, dad, son, daughter, and is it mum also? M-U-M? I think it is, yes. So there's 2 different versions of mom and mum. But there are coordinating dies for all of these scripty sentiments. This die fits both of these stacks of sentiments, and these dies fit all of the scripty ones, and there we have the completion. Next, we have the Glimmer of the month. We are all family, and it's another stack of sentiments and scripty people foils. So I'm going to foil these on an A2 size piece of cardstock with some gold foil. And then we will take the 2 coordinating dies. They both line up and cut multiple things at once, which that is such a time saver. I really love that. So we'll secure those with some Best Ever Craft tape and run those through the die cutting machine to get our completed sentiments. And there they are. I, of course, am going to use my quick and easy method of organizing these. This is the extra for this month. This is Fairways and Fishtail Sentiments. If you get the deluxe caboodle, you'll get that press plate set. I also have the stitching die of the month here. And I'm taking all of the different sentiments. This is the better press of the month. This is Quilted Memories. I'm taking all of the sentiment components that can be glimmer foiled, and I'm going to lay them all out on a piece of, well, on the platform, on a piece of copy paper that is cut to A2 size. This is one of my favorite tricks when I know I'm going to be doing several foilings of the same thing. Then I can lay my foil over it and use that copy paper guide for placing my paper that I'm going to glimmer foil on. Now that I have all of those sentiments foiled, there are coordinating dies for these sentiments with the different sets. The Fairway set has a stack of sentiments also, and you can just quickly and easily die cut all of these sentiments. I thought this would be a great way to showcase a quick way to do a bunch of sentiments at once. Next, we're going to pull out the Quilted Memories Better Press of the Month plate. And because I want to do multiple sheets where I'm going to do foiling twice, I have found the center of one of those petals has a line down the center. And where that meets, I am marking that on the edge of the plate. Then we can reline this up the next run around. So I've secured my plate to the cardstock. I have a piece of, I think that is polished brass, and we'll run this through. Actually, we'll put it on the platform, we'll put it back on the base, let it heat up, run it through my die cut machine, and it's foiled beautifully. Now we're going to take that plate and we're going to line those marks up again with the lines on the pattern that's already been foiled, secure that with the piece of tape again, and add our foil. And this actually worked out really quite well. When you have a plate with repeating patterns, it's pretty easy to generally find a way to make this work for a 5x7 card, or just to cover a half sheet of cardstock. Then you can use it for whatever size cards you want to make. Next, we're going to pull out the Mosaic and Quilted Memories stencil of the month. This coordinates with both one of the embossing folders and with the Better Press of the month. So there are 3 stencils that coordinate with this Quilted Memories Better Press of the month plate. And I have a piece of white cardstock that I've foiled twice with that Better Press plate. Now you can Better Press with it too, of course, and I did figure out a way to do the Better Press to cover a 5x7 piece of cardstock also. I have ink blended the first layer with, I think that is rustic pine? That might be it. Pine Needles, that's the name of the Distress Oxide color. And this is Salty Ocean. And then we have a third color, and we're going to use Wilted Violet for the next stencil section. I'm using my 9x12 sticky mat from Altenew to hold my paper and my stencils down. I also have a piece of acetate from packaging that I'm using to cover the section of the stenciling or the paper that I'm not stenciling at this moment. Here is the completed sheet. You can see where it meets in the middle. It's not a perfect pattern in the middle, but it's not distracting. Looks gorgeous. This is the Mosaic Memories embossing folder of the month, which is gorgeous. And it also has a coordinating component in the Mosaic and Quilted Memories stencil of the month. So I wanted to, of course, stencil the entire sheet of cardstock here that we ran through the embossing folder. So I am laying it over the embossed areas so that it fits perfectly over the raised parts. I'm using 2 different colors here to do my stenciling. And I don't even have to be all that particularly careful. I did originally think I was going to use the green also, but I only used 2 colors since this is just a 2 layers stenciling set. and it does come together pretty quickly. You're watching me try to find the areas that line back up, and now I wonder if I couldn't have done this just in 2 passes sideways. I don't think so. I think I tried that and it didn't really work. But this comes together with a little bit of patience and a little bit of persistence to get the pattern to line up across the entire background. I really like this thought of stenciling over your embossing. I think it just adds such a great element to your project with both the stenciling and the embossing. It really highlights the pattern that you create with an embossing folder. I love embossing folders. I have always loved embossing folders and stencils. They are very affordable elements to have in your crafting area and have so much versatility. Next, we're going to use the stitching die of the month, and we all know that I love a good 5x7 card, and I tend to try to stretch my supplies to make this work. So we're first going to die cut this with one edge not covered with your cutting plate so that you can overlap this, because this die does cut out the edge. There are a lot of cover plates that do that, and you have to get pretty creative to get around that. Now, to avoid cutting both the edges, we're going to overhang the plate on the bottom plate, and we're going to not overlap the cutting edge on the portion that's still on the cutting plate with the top plate. So we're going to have to line this up 3 times, and what I'm doing is I'm lining up the place with the fallout square, and that's how I'm cutting this each time. Now, you have to make sure you don't allow the cutting edge to be covered by both plates on areas that you don't want cut. And I hope that made sense. But we have a whole sheet here, an 8.5 by 5.5 inch piece of cardstock that we were able to die cut with this pattern in a very cohesive way. It looks fantastic. I die cut it using one of the matting basics for 5x7, and this I believe is just a smidge smaller than 5x7. I can't remember for sure. I may have cut it to fit a 5x7. Now I am going to add a few more holes here in areas that don't die cut, and I'm just following that grid pattern and poking the holes where the intersections would happen. This creates our half squares on the edge of the pattern here, and I'm just going to stitch one of these squares for you. So I have found some beautiful variegated crochet thread, and that's what I'm going to use. I'm creating a grid pattern here by stitching across this in one direction, and then I'll stitch in the other direction. And my little holes here are not perfect like the die cut ones, but that's okay. I think it really creates a cute pattern in the end, and that it's a little difficult to tell that I am adapting this die. So now that we have them stitched all in one direction, we'll go back and stitch in the other direction. And the secret for me to not get your thread all tangled is to flip the piece of cardstock so that whichever direction or whichever way I'm stitching, the thread is towards my work surface, so it doesn't tangle up in the edges of the cardstock. You can see this pattern developing all the way across here, and you could do this in a variety of ways. You don't have to do this grid pattern, but that's how it was designed, and it actually looks pretty cute. I really like this. And full confession, I got 5 different variegated crochet thread balls recently, and when they came in, I could not resist playing with them. And so I have, like, I don't know, 6 of these panels all stitched up. I'm not going to use all of them in this video, just because you don't want to see a video of 10 cards of just one of the elements of the card kits. It is very soothing. I really have found that I enjoy stitching on cardstock. It's a very meditative act I harkens back to when I really enjoyed doing cross stitch. It's almost mindless. And look at that, a completed and a half stitch. Next, I like to add, or I did find that I liked to add some metallic cardstock, or sorry, not cardstock, metallic thread, and do just 3 lines between each of these grids. I skipped the furthest out hole and just did the 3 center holes, going back and forth, just creating 3 lines, and it just adds an extra oomph to this pattern. And there are all of those individual lines. You could do that and not do anything with those squares in between. You could stamp something in there or put little die cuts or embellishments. And this is a completed pattern with all of the stitching completed. Now we're actually going to start card number 1. We've got tumbled glass and shaded lilac. I really like these 2 colors together. They blend together into a really nice color. I did have to hydrate my ink pads just a little bit, and I've been doing that a lot lately. And some of my colors I actually had to add some re-inker to. So we're going to ink first the shaded lilac and then the tumbled glass. Try not to get fingerprints on my cardstock here. And this is an 8.5 by 5.5 inch piece of cardstock, because of course I'm going to start with a 5 by 7 card. I chose these colors to coordinate with the stitching that I just did on the stitching die of the month to create a card with that. You can see how these blend together and create a nice purpley blue color. Just love that. Now that I have that all ink blended, we're going to use the Spellbinders and Yasumoto watercolor mixing set. I love these. I love a good spatter, and we're going to do some gold here. I just added a little water to that and worked it up into a nice thick watercolor paint and spattered it with one of the many paintbrushes in my stash. I am going to use the same die to die cut this paper with the as I used to die cut the stitched die of the month. And now we'll glue this together. Just going to add glue primarily over the stitching, because that's what's going to stick to the cardstock below it the most. Then we'll just line up all of those edges and make sure everything is nice and even, and put a heavyweight item on top of this. I believe I used some Misties. I think I have 2 Misties on top of it. After that's all dry, I add a piece of extra cardstock behind the whole panel, and we'll glue that to our 5 by 7 card base here. And now I have all this beautiful stitching that I really don't want to cover up very much. I pulled out the rose gold assortment pack of the treasured cardstock, and this is the Hero Studio card kit dies from February 2025. If you have this in your stash, this is a really fun, large, scripty sentiment, and I just couldn't resist using it. Sometimes you just know what you want, and go ahead and use it. Dig from your stash. Use your things. I decided to add a little bit of a drop shadow behind the glitter cardstock here, which I love that color of glitter cardstock from the rose gold assortment. It is gorgeous. And I'm still working on the same original packages of the treasured cardstock assortments here. I have not purchased an extra pack yet for any of them. I need to, though, because eventually I'm going to run out. But they do last a long time, and you see that I use them pretty freely. I added an extra piece of cardstock behind the vellum shadow. I've already glued the sentiment to the vellum shadow. I'll flip that over and add this extra piece of cardstock behind that to add a little height so it seems to float above our card. Now we're going to use that piece that we glued to the back of the vellum as a safe place to add our glue also. So I'm just going to use my fine tip bottle to apply some Barely Art Precision Glue, which is my favorite glue. And we'll place that on our card front, add a heavyweight block, and then we're going to pick a sentiment from the Glimmer of the month, We Are All Family, and we're going to put that below our big scripty sentiment. And it says, "Your hugs are the best." I think that is such a sweet sentiment. I actually really love that one. Now that I have that adhered, and I did add some extra pieces of cardstock behind that, and there's a little bit of a gap there, so we're going to just make sure that it doesn't get sucked down onto that and make a floppy sentiment. Next, we're going to take a sentiment from the Quilted Memories Better Press of the Month. This is one of the sentiments that I had already glimmer foiled, and I did think about putting the dog on the inside of the card. That would have worked if I had a dog on the front of the card, then it would have carried that same theme to the inside, but I decided to leave it off and just use the sentiment that reads, "You're a true friend." Such a cutie. You could also use these fresh picked sentiments, which are fun scripty ones, or the everyday sentiments. Those are nice big scripty fonts that you could use also. Lots of ways to add sentiments to the front of that card. Next, we're going to use the Fairways and Fishtails dies, and I'm going to take this fella that I assembled earlier and use some Copic markers to add some shading and extra color to his pants, just because I thought it wasn't, I wanted to have a different color than his head, and I really thought it would be kind of cool to add some shading to his pants. Just going to go back and forth with these two different colors of, I think this is a E31 and an E34, I think is what the colors were. I'm going to use those same colors to add some shading to our dock because the craft cardstock is a little light. It is fun to add a little extra detail to your die cut elements with Copic markers, watercolors, Tombow markers, or which are water-based markers, all kinds of ways to add fun details to your elements. I did decide to smooth that out just a little more, and we'll get that framed up. Next, we're going to use the Mosaic Memories embossing folder of the month. I have some Rustic Wilderness Distress ink, not the oxide, they're plain ink, and we're going to rub that on the top portion, or the portion of the embossing folder that has the writing on it, and really make sure we get good inking here. I did have a piece of the linen ink pad come off, and I just made sure that that didn't end up going through the die cut machine with our paper. I'm going to ink this up again, and it's pretty easy to get this paper to slip right back where it needs to go by letting it slide into the grooves of the already embossed paper into the design on the embossing folder. No need to actually use adhesives. I have not had problems getting stuff to line back up. Run that through a second time. Did I do it a third? I can't remember now. Nope, just twice. And I'm just showing how easy it is to clean the embossing folder. Just a little bit of water. Mine happens to be a little bit of soapy water. Got a little dish soap in that big bottle of water, and a microfiber cloth. We're also going to use the 5x7 Matting Basics die here. This is set B and the largest one, which is just a smidge less than 4 3/4 by 6 3/4. And that die cut perfectly. I did run it through the embossing folder again. We're also going to use the Perfect Touch arches, and that came out with the Justine Hovey's, no, whose is it? I can't remember. Is it Justine Hovey's? One of the on the farm or the farm style things. I die cut that from some white cardstock and some craft cardstock, and I am using the Fairways and Fishtails die and sentiments to create the front of our card. We're going to create a cute vignette. I have this piece that I've already added some extra cardstock to the back of, and we have a card base that is the same color as the embossed piece here. This is only 80-pound cardstock. It's from my stash. I don't even know if this color is available anymore from the producer that's a retired Stampin' Up. I think it might be Gumball Green. I can't remember for sure. But it's a green that I pulled out of my stash. And I'm telling you, if you've got colored cardstock in your stash already, you don't have to go out and buy every new color that comes out. Use what you got, and when you need to replace some stuff, then start looking for some new stuff. Or if there's a color you absolutely have to have that you can't replace. I love cardstock. I have a ton of cardstock. I have way more pattern paper than any one person should have, especially since I don't tend to use it. When's the last time you saw me use pattern paper? I like to make my own backgrounds, so I really shouldn't buy pattern paper anymore. We're going to add the dock. I did add a little bit of extra cardstock behind the long top portion of the decking, just to make that lay nice and even. We'll add a little glue to the fishing pole and adhere that to the back side of our fisherman before we adhere this all to a piece of cardstock. I've added extra cardstock layers behind these cute little elements to make sure that everything is nice and flush on our card. He's going to stand on this dock and do some fishing, and the flexibility in the line on this fishing pole makes it so you can do all kinds of different locations for this. You can, I have a fishing tackle box here to set next to him, and that cute little pail. I've added different layers of cardstock shims behind this so that it lays nice and flush against the card front. Now inside, we're going to take that other fishing pole and we're going to take a little bit of glue and glue the little tiny silver hook to that, and it does look better with the hook attached over the top of the line instead of the other way around. I have another fish here, and I chose one that has a different color. We have two different greens here for that fish and the card base, but they're very similar. So they don't clash, but there's definitely enough contrast so you can still see the fish. And there is some craft cardstock as the second color for our fish. And then we have another sentiment here. These are both from that extra for the deluxe caboodle. This says, "Reel in the good life and may your catches be legendary." I think that's a great way to put sentiments on there. This next one, we're using the Florence Fence of Togetherness, and I'm using my favorite mini slimline dies here. If you've got the precision layering mini slimline dies, be sure to keep using them. We're also going to use the Pearl Luster Gilding Polish, which again is a staple in my craft room. And you could use lunar paste or solar paste instead of that. It creates a lovely shine and really adds detail to the raised elements of an embossed layer. Just adding that quickly, and I love how that makes that entire embossed thing pop. We're going to pull out some elements from the Family and Friends vignettes. We have the arched dies here, and we have some of the flowers. I'm going to take our embossed panel with an extra bit of cardstock behind it and adhere it to a 6.5 by 3.5 inch mini slimline card. I've added extra layers of cardstock behind each of these arched label dies or arched dies. And now we'll adhere those fairly centered top and bottom and side to side on this mini slimline card. We'll take our assembled floral grouping here. I did dry fit with those and then used my press and seal scrap here to keep them all in the placement I wanted, and then added extra layers of cardstock in some strategic spots so that these will all pop up nicely. I'm going to add that to the card front, and this last little piece wanted to fall off, so I took it off completely so I could place it back where I wanted it. The press and seal works really well, but it's not always perfect. But if I can get most of my plan together before I forget how I wanted it, that is always helpful to me. We have another branch of buds here, and I did trim the stem a little bit. Don't be afraid to modify your die cuts to fit your plan. I'll get those tucked under the big flower That is such a pretty little grouping. Then we're going to take a sentiment from the We Are All Family Glimmer of the Month. And I found a sentiment that says, to my friend. And we'll just tuck that in among the florals. For the inside, we're going to take some more of those die cut foliage pieces. We've got 3 buds here and an extra leaf. And then we have another extra leaf and this smaller blossom. And we'll group these things together and create a pattern to go above and beyond our sentiment. The sentiment is also from the Glimmer of the Month, and this one says, forever my partner in crime. That's perfect for a friend, right? You always want to, I love those ride or die, partner in crime, those kinds of sentiments. They're just fun. And yeah, we all like to be a little fun and sassy sometimes. So that is the Peridot Color Essential Gems that I wanted to add a little extra pizzazz to these, to this floral element, especially since it doesn't have the same proportions, the same ratio for top to bottom. We've got this main element that sits right in the middle of our longer version. So I'm extending the main image by adding the gem so your eyes follow above and below the actual arched element. I'm not afraid to use lots of these little gems. I think that really turned out cute. Card number 4, we're going to use the Mosaic and Quilted Memories. And I am just ink blending with Kitsch Flamingo and Mowed Lawn. I did not use the embossing folder, just the stencil on this one. And I have another 5.5 by 8.5 inch piece of cardstock that I'm ink blending this stencil, again repeating it down the card front so that I have a pattern across the entire piece so that I can die cut this down for another 5 by 7 card. I love these colors together. Kitsch Flamingo and Mowed Lawn are very vibrant, spring-like colors. This is a 2-layer stencil pattern, and it's really easy to line up your repeating pattern. And I actually didn't even make a big mess on this cardstock. I could go, I did complete it on the top too. And now I'm just filling in a little more of these sections on the side so that I can be sure to get a full 5 by 7 panel out of this. You can see how pretty this looks as a larger pattern and how easy it is to line everything up. One more corner here. I think that completes, oh no, I need to do the pinks yet. Just carefully lining those back up, filling in any of the spots that I needed to fill in. More than I thought. I was just zoned. I had, I think it was BritBox actually. I had some videos going and I was just going to town, making cards, having fun. Here I'm using that 5 by 7 matting die again. This is the largest from set B and our watercolor mixing set. And I did use both the white and the gold on this, didn't I? Maybe I only used the gold. Yep, looks like I only used the gold. And when I'm in a card making session, that pan can stay wet for like an hour or so. And then I only need to do a little bit of workup to get that to create the thickness of the concentration of the wet paint that I want. On the inside of the card, I'm doing one of my favorite techniques with a stencil, which is to do just a soft stenciling without hard edges so that this looks like the pattern just kind of fades away along the edges of the card. I love how that looks. So we'll start assembling this. I added a little extra cardstock behind the stenciled pattern, stenciled matting layer onto our 5 by 7 card base, just using a heavyweight white cardstock for that. And then we're going to pull out the Family and Friends Vignettes large die of the month again. We've got our adorable little ballerina princess dinosaur. And I'm going to use the Treasured Cardstock Gold Assortment Pack, and we're going to use the brushed gold to die cut the larger of the two arches and then white for the smaller. And now I'm going to pull in the Mosaic Memories embossing folder of the month, and we'll emboss on the smaller arched panel, just to add a little extra texture and detail on that piece so it isn't quite so stark. You know how I am. I can't do clean and simple. I just can't. And we'll layer those together with extra cardstock between the layers. And I decided to not be just centered. I decided to center it in the pattern. So we've got this nestled into the ink blended or stenciled pattern. And I'm using some flowers from that same die set, the large die of the month die set. I do have to trim back some of the stem so this whole flower will fit on the front of the card, tucked under the edge of the arched panel. I'm going to place our cute little dinosaur on here to get placement for the grouping of flowers that I want to put at the base of the arched elements. Again, having to trim back some of the stems. I have the smaller 5-petal style and the 2 cupped flowers and an extra leaf or 2. And we're just going to tuck those all in and create a cute little floral group underneath our princess. Next, we're going to use the clear Stampin' Die of the month. This is a sentiment that says, "For my granddaughter." I'm thinking of my youngest granddaughter who loves dinosaurs, and actually she loves the color orange. I should have done this in oranges. Oh well. She loves to dress up. She is just like her mom, ultimate tomboy who loves to wear dresses, and that's okay. I love it. So we've got a ballerina dinosaur, and we're going to put her on an action wobbler. Let her dance on the card front. Just love that. The kids always love a good action wobbler. I thought about adding a little more of the flowers, but decided to forego that. And then I added another sentiment from the Clear Stampin' Die set, and this one says, "Enjoy your day to the fullest." So this wouldn't have to be a birthday card. This could be a whatever you want card. You could send it just for the heck of it. And that leads us into card number 5. We're going to use Abandoned Coral, Worn Lipstick, and Lumberjack Plaid and create a nice blended background. This is just a little bigger than 4.25 by 5.5 because I want to die cut this down to fit behind a stitched panel. And this is going to be my 1A2 size card in the grouping. I think it is. Yeah. And I wanted this to match the stitching that I did on the stitched panel that I'm going to show you. I love these 3 colors together. They do blend together quite nicely. And we're going to use the stitched panel from the Diamond Knit Stitching Die of the Month. This was a variegated red panel, and I did the gold stitching in between. We've got an assembled dog from Family and Friends Vignettes. I made so many of those dogs. I think I still have 8 of them left. We're also going to use the Precision Layering A2 set in set A and use the die that cuts a 4.25 by 5.5 inch panel. This fits perfectly behind our stitched cover plate. I'm going to add glue mainly behind the stitched portions because, again, that is the only portion of this that's going to touch the other card base. I've lined that up, and I am going to put a heavyweight block on top of that to let the glue dry. And then we're also going to do a little ink blending with the same colors. That's the we're just using the lightest color. This is the Worn Lipstick. And I'm going to do heavy ink blending on one end of this piece of cardstock and then blend a little lighter on the other end. I wanted a little variation. I didn't want a real solid inking on this. And it doesn't have to be super smooth. It looks pretty smooth on the finished product. And then I'm going to take this heart nesting heart die set. This is from the January 2025 Hero Studio card kit. And again, since Spellbinders has purchased Hero Arts, I can now show the Hero Arts stuff. And I have been getting the Hero, they used to be called My Monthly Hero. I've been getting those kits since pretty much the beginning, and I love them. And it's kind of nice to throw them in now and again. And I needed a heart die, and I don't have the nested heart dies from Spellbinders, so this will have to substitute. I thought I would add a little extra detail on this heart that I die cut. So I've got abandoned coral and lumberjack plaid that I'm going to add on these 2-piece stencils from the Mosaic and Quilted Memories stencil of the month. And I really like how this heart turns out. But spoiler alert, I did not actually use this ink blended heart on this project, just because there was that would have been too much competing pattern on the card front. I needed to keep it a little more simple, but I thought it'd be fun to show you that stenciled heart. I think it really turned out cute. So instead of the stenciled heart, we're just going to use the other part of the cardstock and die cut that. And we're going to use a sentiment from Quilted Memories. And it says, "You're a true friend," which is perfect with the dog, who's always your bestie. Now I'm going to use that solid white line that runs to the right of the center of this heart as my line of where we're going to ultimately end up cutting off part of the heart. And I'm gluing together the dog, the sentiment, and the heart, and creating that component so that I can move it to the card front in one solid piece. I did add extra layers of cardstock in various ways here to create a nice level grouping. And our cute little dog needed a couple extra layers under that part. So now I'll line that up on the card front, and I'm sorry I didn't zoom back out so you can't see exactly how I was doing that. Once it is well adhered to the card front, oh wait, I had to use a little bit of these thin strips of dimensional foam to tuck under the end of that sentiment. That was just the quickest way to get that nice and even, because it has a couple extra layers of cardstock that it needed to deal with. Now I'm just going to use my scissor here to trim off the heart so it's flush with the edge of the other layers of cardstock, because this is A2 size card sized. It will cover the entire front of the card. I'm adding some glue to the back of this. I don't believe I put an extra layer of cardstock behind that, just because there were enough layers on there already. Once I have that nicely adhered, I did contemplate using this ink blended heart on the inside. I even went so far as to put glue on it. And then I thought, you know what? That pattern isn't anywhere on the rest of the card, so let's not use that. We're going to use a sentiment from the Glimmer of the month. This says, "Forever my partner in crime." So we're repeating that sentiment, but it is so cute. I think it works. My dog is my partner in crime. Yep. We'll just get that well adhered to the inside of the card. I am loving that I have so many sentiments to choose from. Card number 6, we're going to use Quilted Memories, Better Press of the Month, and we're going to use the Stencil of the Month. And I have this piece of cardstock that oh gosh, I must have forgot to show you the maybe I didn't film it. I better pressed this plate twice on a piece of watercolor cardstock using the VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. And now I am ink blending the pattern on from the coordinating stencil of the month. I'm only going to use 2 colors here. I'm just using the Kitsch Flamingo and the Mode Lawn. I did mention that I really like these colors together. They make a nice spring background. I really love this pattern. Yeah, that's something I'm going to want to pull out and use many more times. So if you're only going to get 1 or 2 of the kits this month, I would get the Better Press of the month and the Stencil of the month. I used the heck out of that, and probably the large die of the month. Oh gosh, who am I kidding? I think you should get the whole deluxe caboodle because all of these components are very useful. I love them all. Time for a little more splatter, and this time, splatter, whatever you want to call it. And I decided to add gold, the gold watercolor to the centers of the flowers on this pattern. There is not a stencil for those little tiny centers of the card. I start out with spattering it with white or the pearly color of watercolor, and then I come back with a fine detail brush and add the centers of these little tiny centers of the flowers. Just going to show you a few, and you can see that I'm working this watercolor, metallic watercolor, into a nice thick slurry. And I'm just adding little dots of color, making sure I don't have too much paint on my brush as I go from center to center. I'm not going to show you me painting all of them because it's the same process all the way down the card front. Actually, this is a 5x7 piece of watercolor cardstock, which I'm going to ultimately cut down. And I'm not sure how it happened when I was ink blending, but I got a little bit of a smear of green ink on a spot, but don't worry, we'll cover that up. I really like how that metallic watercolor looks. Then we're going to use the Precision Layering Mini Slimline Set B. Again, if you have this, fantastic. It is not available anymore. But you can just trim this down. This is going to ultimately be 3 3/4 by 6 1/4 to fit on a 3.5 by 6.5 inch mini slimline card. I've added extra cardstock behind this panel, and we'll adhere that to our card base. And that alone is gorgeous. Now to cover my oopsies, I have a piece of pink cardstock from the heart that we die cut for the previous card. Well, this scrap is going to get used to cover up that green spot and to add a nice landing spot for our sentiment and additional items. I took and cut just a little tiny nick on that so I could trim it with my paper trimmer and have a nice clean edge, since this does not extend all the way to the borders of the card base. It fits perfectly on the layer. I have the smaller of the 5-petal flowers from the large die of the month, and I'm adding a little bit of extra cardstock, just 2 little squares of it, behind the flower. You could use dimensional foam if that's what you like to do. I like to use scraps of cardstock just because I have them already. And I like that they aren't squishy. For some reason, I think it just feels better if it's not, if it doesn't have that extra movement, or it adheres better. And I'm adding extra cardstock behind the other elements here to help pop those up a little bit too. So we've got both the larger and the smaller cupped flowers from the large die of the month this month. And I'm trimming back the stems so they fit snugly into this tight little configuration of flowers. Just a little extra time to add the backs. Usually I cut this process out of the video. I don't know why I didn't this time. That's okay. The video this month is only 1 hour and 19 minutes and 32 seconds. Gosh, that's almost short for me, isn't it? I know this video was a little late in the month. It was a very busy month and a half for me. We actually flew to California and spent a week there to visit family. We're going to use a sentiment from the We Are All Family Glimmer of the Month here. This says, Mom, your support means the world to me. No, it just means the world. That's what it says. And while we were there, I had a blast, but I was also not creating. So I was a little behind on my assignments. And then on the flight back, I'm very allergic to strawberries, and pretty sure that a lot of people chose the fresh fruit tray on the airplane near the beginning of our flight back from San Francisco. So about 3.5 hours in the airplane with strawberry fumes, and I left that flight with a sore throat and lots of extra sore throat, mouth swelling, lip swelling, lots of extra use of my inhaler, and tried to neb my way through it the next day and had to go to the doctor and get on steroids about 36 hours after I got off the airplane. And then, yeah, it just took some time to get over that. And then I had work. And when I can't breathe, I really can't work on my projects. So, yep, c'est la vie. I did hurry as soon as I felt better enough and get you your 10 card video as completed as quickly as I could. Hopefully, the projects aren't a disappointment. Next, we have the Quilted Memories. Again, I love this better press plate, as you can tell. We're going to use pine needles. I've ink blended a panel of cardstock, and I have some green foil here. So we're going to foil the green foil on the green color cardstock. If you had colored cardstock you wanted to use, this would work great too. But I like to create coordinating panels, and I have an ink blended panel that we're going to coordinate with. So we've got Wilted Violet, pine needles, and Salty Ocean again. And we have that panel that we ink blended earlier. So now all of that coordinates perfectly. Then we have the Pieced Heart die. This is from the Kelly something collection. This is one of the things that I was supposed to have been working on in February, but I didn't get to it until now. So I've die cut each of those panels with that giant pieced heart, and I am fitting these pieces together using the different colors and patterns. Well, they're each just different colors of the same pattern. And I am using some press and seal to get all of these lined up very nicely. I figured this would be the easiest way to assemble this. And we're going to make a shaped card. The die set has a solid die that cuts out a layering, a backer for this heart with a little bit of an extra edge around the outside of it. And that came together quite nicely. I die cut 2 of the larger hearts from heavyweight white cardstock. I'm going to take one of them and score it at 1/4 inch from the top of the heart, and this is where it will fold. So now that I have a good crease line there, I'm going to add a little glue to those flaps after I fold them a couple times to make sure that they will move nicely. And we'll line the heart back up. I first thought it would line up most nicely in the scoring board here. This is the Spellbinders scoring board, which also has a element that helps you create envelopes, which is awesome. I'll let that sit under a heavyweight block for a minute here. We'll add some glue behind the pieced heart pieces here, just making sure that I get all the pointy, narrow ends covered for sure. Use my press and seal to get this lined up where I want it. I am still going to put a heavyweight block on top of this and let it sit for a minute or two before I try to peel off the press and seal, which that worked so nicely. I love that. It looks like a quilted heart. And next we will take some sentiments from the Glimmer of the Month, We Are Family. I decided to use 3 of those sentiments on the front. It says, "You're my hero. You inspire me daily. Your hugs are the best." I thought that was a great front of the card. I did add extra cardstock behind each of those sentiment strips. And I did not try to put those on super straight. I just let them be a little wonky. On the inside of the card, now this I am going to try to keep pretty straight. This says, "Thanks for everything." Now you could use this as a Mother's Day or a Father's Day card. You could use this for a friend, birthdays, all kinds of ways to use this card. It's a nice general card. Next, we're going to use the Quilted Memories again. This is card number 8. This is the Better Press of the Month. I foiled that in silver on some black cardstock. We're going to use the 5x7 Matting Basics Set B, and we're going to use the largest die from that because, of course, we're going to do another 5x7 card. I've got the Mirrored Arch Labels dies. You could use any of your nesting dies to do this. I'm just going to choose two different dies here, one to cut the hole out of the larger patterned panel and one to cut a piece out of some metallic cardstock. This is from the Silver Assortment Treasured cardstock. This is the Mirror Silver cardstock, and we're just going to add a little bit of glue behind this main patterned panel and line that up so it creates an inset frame inside that die cut area. Once I have that lined up exactly where I want it, I'm going to give some firm pressure and add my heavyweight block behind that. We're going to use some elements from the Fairways and Fish Tails sentiments. And the one that isn't the sentiments. We're going to use the golf club and the golf ball with the T. We're going to take the Mosaic Memories and a piece of white cardstock. This one happens to be A2 size cardstock. It just has to be big enough to cover that hole behind there. I wanted a little extra added detail that wasn't overpowering. I've added extra cardstock to create a little height, make that shadowed area a little bit deeper. And I am making sure that this lines up and covers the entire whole area. I'll add a little piece of Best Ever craft tape to secure that in place as we glue down the golf club and the ball. I'm going to trim off the extra that I don't need for the golf club, add some glue behind that, tuck it into our window area and glue it to the white panel. And I could have centered that a little bit better, but it was already stuck. So our golf ball and tee are fairly centered, but that golf ball club isn't going to hit that exactly where it needs to. Oh well. I'm going to add some glue on the layering elements there, and I did add some extra cardstock below that embossed part. We're going to use the stencil of the month with the pattern that's foiled from the front, and we're going to use Lost Shadow Distress Oxide ink just very lightly on this panel of cardstock that's cut to just under 4 3/4 by 6 3/4. We're going to use the same color ink for each of these layers and just create a subtle pattern that fades out to the edges so that you can write over this. Now, I do remember someone saying that it's a little harder to write over the Distress Oxide inks, so you could absolutely use just plain Distress ink if you have it, or any other dye-based ink instead of an oxide or hybrid ink on the inside of your card for your stenciling. I have not had a lot of problems writing over Distress Oxides. Personal preference, whatever works for you. Now I have a 5x7 card base that is black cardstock, and again this is only 80-pound cardstock, so I like to make it a little heftier by adding another layer of cardstock on the inside of the card. I did not do that with the green card, the fishing card earlier, and that still feels hefty enough, but I probably should have put a liner on the inside of that card too. Now I add some glue to the back of this card, and you can see all kinds of layers here. It's actually not all that thick. This is all 80-pound cardstock that was layered behind it, so while it does have that illusion of height, it doesn't feel that thick. I centered that on our 5x7 card base, and oh my goodness, that foiled pattern is so pretty. It does read gender neutral to me. You could give this to man or woman. Our sentiment is you're on par with the best. And on the inside, we're going to add another sentiment from the Fairways and Fishtails sentiments. This one says, have a hole in one kind of day. There are 6 sentiments on the Fairways and Fishtails sentiment extra better press of the month. I was really having fun with the foiling though. But they are great sentiments. That's a keeper. That's a keeper. This is my only rainbow themed card in this month's kit. Can you believe it? I've only got one rainbow themed one. We've got Kitsch Flamingo, Squeezed Lemonade, and Salvage Patina. These are 3 of my favorite colors to do rainbow blend on. It's a nice soft blend. And I did indeed just re-ink all of these ink pads, and oh my goodness. Yeah, I must ink blend a lot because it was time. It was definitely time to re-ink these ink pads. You can go a long way with between inking, re-inking them, but it does have to happen sometimes. Next, I'm going to use the Snow and Ice Luster Polish, and I'm going to cover the entire panel. Now, you could do this with the Astro Paste. You could do it with, oh gosh, you could do it with any kind of clear, sparkly paste. I just really like my gilding polishes. They are what I have in my stash, and I'm going to use them. I have in the past fallen into the trap of ordering all of the pastes, and you can only use so much. So I'm trying to be a little more responsible and only buy stuff when I need to replace it when it comes to the pastes, because they do dry out. We're also going to use this Florence Fence of Togetherness 3D embossing folder of the month, and I love how that turned out. I am going to make a 5x7 card. Shocker, I know. 5x7 matting basic set B, largest die. Cut that out, and I did run it through the embossing folder again to refresh that embossing. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I just had this wild hair idea to do the Snow and Ice Luster Gilding Polish on a piece of rainbow blended cardstock and run it through with the 3D embossing folder. And then I came up with a card idea. I just wanted to see how it looked. We're going to use the gold assortment pack again. We're going to use the pearl paper, and we're going to use the everyday sentiments, and we're going to use the glitter cardstock and the pearl paper for that. I have the sentiment Thinking of You picked out. I've die cut it with those treasured cardstock elements, and now we're going to assemble them. This is one of the Simon Hurley sentiments that I've had for probably a year or two, and I love a good bold sentiment, and that's kind of what this card called for. And I thought I would try gold on gold layering with the different specialty cardstocks, and I actually quite like it. I don't know, it's subtle but blingy at the same time. I don't know how you manage that, but that's what I wanted to try, and I really like how it turned out. And I love how the treasured cardstocks play so well together. It is really easy to glue these together, especially the pearlized and the glitter. They really do like, it's the pearl paper, I think. It has an affinity to glue. It adheres very nicely. Now that I have these all glued together, I did add some extra layers of cardstock behind them. I did, I think, 2 layers of white cardstock behind each of these. And I really hope that it's not too boring to watch me adhere these layers together. I did use my heavyweight block to add a little pressure to make sure all of those layers stay well adhered together. Have any of you gotten your kits for the month yet this month? Are you creating with them? I know it's late in the month. What are you guys hoping to see more features of? I know someone had asked if I was going to do the Hero Studio card kits in a 10 card video like this. And I don't think I have enough time in my day to add that to my roster. You might see more of the Hero Studio stuff show up in the 10 card videos for the Spellbinders Club kits. So if you enjoy either of those, yeah, stay tuned. You might see more. If that's not something you want to see me do, I'm open to hearing about that too. I did ink blend another panel with those same colors in a smaller scale and die cut the arched pieces from the large die of the month, and that's what we're going to use as the landing spot for our sentiment. I've got the Thinking of You, and I was going to do 3 lines here, but I decided that I liked it better as 2 lines. It just wasn't quite big enough up and down for me to do 3 lines of sentiment with this size of sentiment. So I'm centering the of you under the thinking in 1 line, and then we're going to do some fill around that. I'm going to go back to the florals from the large die of the month, and I have 2 pink and a yellow, and I am adding a little bit of extra cardstock behind those so they stand out a little bit, and tucking them in between the words and creating a visual angle across that panel. And we're going to take some gems from the crystal mix from the Color Essential Gems. I'm using a ton of these, but you know what? I have these gems. It's time to use them. I've had all of these for a long time, and I don't know about you, but all of us, or I have been working on not just hoarding my elements. They do me no good sitting in a drawer, and you can only pet them for so long. Time to bring them out and play. And I don't know how long the adhesive is good on the back of these gems. I've got some gems from Stampin' Up! That I should use up too. Oh boy. Yeah, I'm trying to de-stash a bit. I do want to be able to keep playing with my things, but if they stop working after a period of time, then yeah, it's kind of a waste if we don't use them. And when you use them up, it gives you a reason to move on to something else in your stash or to purchase some new things on the market. On the inside of the card, I'm just going to take a single bloom and add that to the lower corner of the inside of the card. I decided to go pretty simple on the inside of this one. That was card number 9. Now we're on to card number 10. And remember way back when I did at the beginning of the video, I had stenciled on the embossed Mosaic Memories with the Mosaic and Quilted Memories stencil set. I cut it down to 3 1/4 by 4 3/4 to fit on this 4-bar card. 4-bar cards are 3 1/2 by 5 inches. I added extra cardstock behind that panel. We're going to take one of the sentiments from the Quilted Memories Better Press of the Month. This one says, "Just because I care." I added a little bit of extra cardstock on the back of this sentiment, which I foiled in polished brass on black cardstock. And we'll center that right in the middle of that pattern, and we'll use some Prism AB Color Essential Gems to add a little bit of extra pizzazz all the way around this sentiment. So I'm going to add 2 above, 2 below, and 2 on each end of that sentiment strip. And I'm just using the smallest 2 sizes of these gems. That's pretty much all I have left on this sheet of gems. Might be time to look at maybe getting another sheet of the Prism AB. I really like it. It has that blues and purples tones to it. Now that I have all of the gems on, let's work on the inside of this card. And since we have that coordinating stencil, we're going to use the We Are Family Glimmer of the Month again for a sentiment for the inside. And this says, "My lifelong friend." Before I adhere that down, we're going to use that stencil and the Salty Ocean and Wilted Violet ink blending sponges. I'm not pulling out the ink pads. I'm just going to use what's on the sponge and add that to the inside of the card. I do love me a good pattern stencil to go on the inside of our cards. It's such a great way to bring the design from the outside of the card to the inside with very little effort. Now we'll glue this sentiment to the inside of the card, centering it towards the top. I like to do that because then you can put your recipient's name above that and then your personal message below it and your signature. That is the 10th card for this month. Here is a quick recap of all of the projects that I created this month. I hope you enjoyed it. I had a fun time putting it together. If you did, please leave me a comment. I love to hear from you. Like and subscribe if you haven't done that. If you're interested in any of the products that I used today, they are listed and linked in the description box below as always. Until next time, here are a couple more videos I thought you might enjoy. Bye-bye.